Councilwoman Parady.
Oh, okay. Some quick trigger fingers on the speaking buttons there. So I just want to say I'm really grateful to all the work among the co-sponsors, among this body, and with the mayor and the agencies on this bill. At the end of the day, it's a really modest bill. What it says is, let's pause the removal of a shelter that someone is living in at times when it's freezing outside, 32 degrees or below, under the 3 forms of authority that the city has most commonly used to do that. It doesn't touch the authority of the fire department. It doesn't touch the authority of Denver Health. It doesn't touch the entirety of the criminal code aside from the urban camping ban. And I do want to pause and note that I think we've all sort of had said to us quite a bit in recent weeks that 81% of Denver voted not to repeal the urban camping ban. And I just want to note, I was one of the voters actually that voted not to repeal the urban camping ban. And that was in part because a lot of our homeless service providers at the time said that it was an imperfect measure, that it was going to have unintended consequences, and so that it actually wasn't necessarily supportive to vote in favor of that repeal. So that is not a measure of support in this city for the criminalization of homelessness, and I will stand by that. This ordinance also doesn't touch, there's a narrower ordinance of DOTI authority that impacts areas that the public actually use for passage. And so if we're concerned about sidewalk access, wheelchair access, ADA access, there is another ordinance that impacts that as well. What it does impact is the ability to clear broader areas of city right-of-way where people commonly camp, such as the edges around the sidewalks. It has never touched our ability to help people move indoors if they voluntarily want to do that, or to offer people any kind of services, healthcare, housing, anything like that. The city can and should do that every day of the year, especially when it's cold outside. And finally, it leaves an exception if the public health department decides in its expertise that some greater threat to human health requires the city to move a shelter under one of these 3 authorities while it is freezing outside. And the other thing I just want to address directly is that there are very good reasons why people who are living unsheltered may not access the emergency sheltering system on any given night. I think it can be hard for those of us that have never experienced that to imagine all of the things that might go into someone's decision-making at that moment. And even the reasons why human decision-making at that moment may be imperfect or lacking full information. First of all, the emergency sheltering system will not be open if it's between 20 and 32 degrees, although we're working on that, and I'm proud of that. Someone may not even know that cold temperatures are predicted for that night if they don't have a smartphone, which they may not. Someone may fear that if they accept some kind of transportation or get on the bus or walk to emergency shelter, that their tent will be removed while they are inside, which this ordinance would prevent. Someone may be very far away from all of our emergency shelters. None of those exist in the far southeast, far southwest, or far northeast parts of the city. So they may simply be unable to get there, especially if it's already getting cold. They may need to be at work in the morning near where they are currently camping. Something like 1/3 of people that are living in homelessness are working. So I've heard dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of stories from people about what it meant either to have their tent moved while they were in emergency shelter in the cold in one of our tough Denver winters, or to be told that they had to pack it up and move it along while it was freezing outside. And I'm telling you, those practices are inhumane, incredibly damaging to people who are already struggling with so much harm and social neglect. I'm glad we had less of that this past winter as we focused on offering people spaces in our new non-congregate shelter system. But unfortunately, although we may have 1,000 less people living in unsheltered homelessness, there are still thousands of Denverites falling into that situation. And until we are able to get to the roots of our incredibly challenging housing crisis, there will continue to be new Denverites living in that situation every day of the year. So those people deserve this small protection. And finally, we can and we should make emergency shelter available at 32 degrees instead of 20 degrees. We can and we should make it available throughout the city. We can and we should reassess our systems for keeping people safe in cold temperatures. And I absolutely commit to my colleagues, the mayor and his agencies, to work really hard on continuing that conversation. But at the end of the day, removing someone's tent when it's freezing out is cruel. Denver can do better. And alongside my co-sponsors and the 42 community groups from unions to shelter providers who signed our letter of support, I ask my colleagues for their yes votes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Flynn.